lay beyond the walls of the Chemical Institute, the night of Europe. Chamberlain had returned from Munich, duped. Hitler had marched into Prague without firing a shot. Franco had subdued Barcelona and was ensconced in Madrid. Fascist Italy, the small-time pirate, had occupied Albania, and the premonition of imminent catastrophe condensed like brumous dew in the houses and streets, in wary conversations and dozing consciences. It appears my ancestors arrived in Piedmont, northwest Italy, around 1500, from Spain by way of Provence. Rejected, or given a less than warm welcome in Turin, they settled in various agricultural localities in southern Piedmont, introducing there the technology of making silk, though without ever getting beyond, even in their most flourishing periods, the status of an extremely tiny minority. They were never much loved or much hated. Stories of unusual persecutions have not been handed down. Nevertheless, a wall of suspicion, of unidentified hostility and mockery must have kept them substantially separated from the rest of the population, even several decades after the emancipation of 1848 and the consequent flow into the cities, if what my father told me of his childhood in Benevagiana is true. His contemporaries, he said, on coming out of school, used to mock him without malice, greeting him with the corner of their jackets gathered in their fists to resemble a donkey's ear and chanting, "Pig's ear, donkey's ear, given to the Jew that's here." The allusion to the ear is arbitrary, and the gesture was originally the sacrilegious parody of the greeting that pious Jews would exchange in synagogue when called up to read the Torah, showing each other the hem of the prayer shawl, whose tassels, minutely prescribed by ritual as to number, length, and form, are replete with mystical and religious significance. But by now, those kids were unaware of the origin of their gesture. I remember here in passing that the vilification of the prayer shawl is as old as anti-Semitism. From those shawls taken from deportees, the SS would make underwear, which then was distributed to the Jews imprisoned in the lager. For 5 months, we had attended, packed together like sardines and full of reverence, Professor P's classes in general and inorganic chemistry, carrying away from them varied sensations, but all of them exciting and new. No, P's chemistry was not the motor force of the universe, nor the key to the truth. P was a skeptical, ironic old man, the enemy of all forms of rhetoric. For this reason, and only for this, he was an anti-fascist. Intelligent, obstinate, and quick-witted, with a sad sort of wit. The laboratory was tidy and clean. We stayed in it 5 hours a day, from 2 o'clock till 7 o'clock. At the entrance, an assistant assigned to each student a preparation, and then each of us went to the supply room, where the hirsute Caselli handed out the raw material, foreign or domestic. A chunk of marble to this fellow, 10 grams of bromine to the next, a bit of boric acid to another, and a handful of clay to yet another. Caselli would entrust these reliquiae to us with an undisguised air of suspicion. This was the bread of science, P's bread. And finally, it was also the stuff that he administered. Who knows what improper use we, profane and unskilled persons, would make of it. In one corner, there was a hood, and Rita sat in front of it. I went over to her and realized with fleeting pleasure that she was cooking my same dish. I say with pleasure because for some time now, I've been hanging around Rita, mentally preparing brilliant conversational openings. And then at the decisive moment, I did not dare come out with them, and I put it off to the next day. I did not dare because of my deep-rooted shyness and my lack of confidence, and also because Rita discouraged all contact. It was hard to understand why. She was very thin, pale, sad, and sure of herself. She got through the exams with good marks, but without the genuine appetite that I felt for the things she had to study. She was nobody's friend. No one knew anything about her, she said very little, and for all those reasons, she attracted me. I tried to sit next to her in class, and she did not take me into her confidence, and I felt frustrated and challenged. In fact, I was desperate, and surely not for the first time. Actually, at that period, I thought myself condemned to a perpetual masculine solitude, denied a woman's smile forever, which I nevertheless needed as much as air. So, my zinc sulfate ended up badly by concentrating, turned into nothing more than a bit of white powder, which in suffocating clouds exhaled all, or almost all, of its sulfuric acid. I left it to its fate and asked Rita to let me walk her home. It was dark and her home was not close by. The goal that I had set myself was objectively modest, but it seemed to me incomparably audacious. I hesitated half of the way and felt on burning coals, and intoxicated myself and her with disjointed, breathless talk. Finally, trembling with emotion, I slipped my arm under hers. Rita did not pull away, nor did she return the pressure, but I fell into step with her, and I felt exhilarated and victorious. It seemed to me that I had won a small but decisive battle against the darkness, the emptiness, and the hostile years that lay ahead. A few months before, the racial laws against the Jews had been proclaimed, and I too was becoming a loner. My Christian classmates were civil people. None of them, nor any of the teachers, had directed at me a hostile word or gesture, but I could feel the withdrawal, and following an ancient pattern, I withdrew as well. Every look exchanged between me and them was accompanied by a minuscule but perceptible flash of mistrust and suspicion. What do you think of me? What am I for you? The same as 6 months ago? Your equal who does not go to Mass? Or the Jew who, as Dante put it, in your midst laughs at you? from Turin, boys and girls, living in Milan, having arrived for different reasons in the large city which war had rendered inhospitable. Our parents, those of us who still had them, had moved to the country to avoid the bombings, and we were living an amply communal life. If I am not mistaken, we were all writing poetry, except for Ettore, who said it was undignified for an engineer. Writing sad, crepuscular poems and not all that beautiful, while the world was in flames, did not seem to us either strange or shameful. We proclaimed ourselves the enemies of fascism. But, actually, fascism had had its effect on us, as on almost all Italians, alienating us and making us superficial, passive, and cynical. The time to consolidate our education was not granted us. In March came the strikes in Turin, indicating that the crisis was near at hand. On July the 25th came the internal collapse of fascism, the piazzas jammed with happy, fraternal crowds, the spontaneous and precarious joy of a country to which liberty had been given by palace intrigue. And then came the 8th of September, the tray green serpent of Nazi divisions on the streets of Milan and Turin, the brutal reawakening. The comedy was over. Italy was an occupied country, like Poland, Yugoslavia, and Norway. In this way, after a long intoxication with words, certain of the rightness of our choice, extremely insecure about our means, our hearts filled with much more desperation than hope, and against the backdrop of a defeated, divided country, we went into battle to test our strength. We separated to follow our destinies, each in a different valley. We were cold and hungry. We were the most disarmed partisans in the Piedmont, and probably also the most unprepared. We thought we were safe because we had not yet moved out of our refuge, buried under 3 feet of snow. But somebody betrayed us, and on the dawn of December the 13th, 1943, we woke surrounded by the fascist republic. They were 300, and we were 11. Equipped with a Tommy gun without bullets and a few pistols. 8 of us managed to escape and scattered among the mountains. 3 of us did not get away. The militiamen captured Aldo, Guido, and myself, still half asleep. As they came in, I managed to hide in the stove's ashes the revolver that I kept under my pillow, and which in any case, I was not sure that I knew how to use. It was tiny, all inlaid with mother of pearl, the kind used in movies by ladies desperately intent on committing suicide. Aldo, who was a doctor, stood up, stoically lit a cigarette and said, "Too bad for my chromosomes." By the fascist militia on the 13th of December, 1943. I was 24. As a Jew, I was sent to Fossoli, near Modena, where a vast detention camp, originally meant for English and American prisoners of war, collected all the numerous categories of people not approved of by the newborn fascist republic. On the morning of February the 21st, we learned that on the following day, the Jews would be leaving. All Jews, without exception. Even the children, even the old, even the ill. Our destination? Nobody knew. We should be prepared for a fortnight of travel. For every person missing at roll call, 10 would be shot. Dawn came on us like a betrayer. It seemed as though the new sun rose as an ally of our enemies to assist in our destruction. There were 12 goods wagons for 650 men. In mine were only 45, but it was a small wagon. Here then, before our very eyes, under our very feet, was one of those notorious transport trains, those which never return, and of which, shuddering and always a little incredulous, we had so often heard speak. Exactly like this, detail for detail. Goods wagons closed from the outside, with men, women and children pressed together, without pity, like cheap merchandise, for a journey down there towards the bottom. This time, it is us that are inside. It was the very discomfort, the blows, the cold, the thirst, that kept us aloft in the void of bottomless despair, both during the journey and after. It was not the will to live, nor a conscious resignation, for few are the men capable of such resolution, and we were but a common sample of humanity. This is how things go in the morning. When Reprieve sounds, and it's still pitch dark, first of all we put on our shoes, otherwise somebody will steal them, and it is an unspeakable tragedy. Then, in the dust and crush, we try to make our beds according to regulations. Immediately after that, we rush to the latrines and the washroom, run to get online for bread, and finally we make a dash to the roll call square. We join our work squads and wait for the head count to end and the sky to grow lighter. One by one, in the dark, the ghosts who are our companions approach. Our squad is a good one. We have a certain esprit de corps. There are no clumsy or whining rookies, and among us exists a rough friendship. In the morning, it is customary for us to greet one another, formally. Good morning, Herr Doctor. Good day, Senior Lawyer. How was your night, Mr. President? Did you enjoy breakfast? Today is Sunday, working Sunday. Arbeitssonntag. We work until 1 p.m. Then we return to camp for the shower, shave, and general control for skin diseases and lice. And in the yards, everyone knew, mysteriously, that the selection would be today. The news arrived, as always, surrounded by a halo of contradictory or suspect details. The selection in the infirmary took place this morning. The percentage was 7% of the whole camp, 50% of the patients. At Birkenau, the crematorium chimney has been smoking for 10 days. Room has to be made for an enormous convoy arriving from the Poznan ghetto. The young tell the young that all the old ones will be chosen. The healthy tell the healthy that only the ill will be chosen. Specialists will be excluded. German Jews will be excluded. Low numbers will be excluded. You will be chosen. I will be excluded. At 1 p.m. exactly, the yard empties in orderly fashion, and for 2 hours, the grey, unending army files past the 2 control stations, where, as on every day, we are counted and recounted, and past the military band, which for 2 hours without interruption plays, as on every day, those marches to which we must synchronize our steps at our entrance and our exit. It seems like every day. The kitchen chimney smokes as usual. The distribution of the soup is already beginning. But then the bell is heard, and at that moment, we realize that we have arrived. Because this bell always sounds at dawn, when it means the Reprieve, but if it sounds during the day, it means Blocksperre, enclosure in huts. And this happens when there is a selection to prevent anyone from avoiding it, or when those selected leave for the gas to prevent anyone seeing them leave. Our Blockältester knows his business. He has made sure that we have all entered. He has the door locked. He has given everyone his card with his number, name, profession, age, and nationality, and he has ordered everyone to undress completely, except for shoes. We wait like this, naked, with the card in our hands for the commission to reach our hut. We are hut 48, but one can never tell if they're going to begin at hut 1 or at hut 60. At any rate, we can rest quietly for at least an hour, and there is no reason why we should not get under the blankets on the bunk. Keep warm. Many are already drowsing when a barrage of orders, oaths, and blows proclaims the imminent arrival of the commission. The Blockältester and his helpers, starting at the end of the dormitory, drive the crowd of frightened, naked people in front of them and cram them in the Tagesraum, which is the quartermaster's office. The Tagesraum is a room 7 yards by 4. When the drive is over, the warm and compact human mass is jammed into the Tagesraum, perfectly filling all the corners, exercising such a pressure on the wooden walls as to make them creak. Now, we are all in the Tagesraum, and besides there being no time, there is not even any room in which to be afraid. The feeling of the warm flesh pressing all around is unusual and not unpleasant. One has to take care to hold up one's nose so as to breathe, and not to crumple or lose the card in one's hand. The Blockältester has closed the connecting door, and he's opened the other two which lead from the dormitory and the Tagesraum outside. Here, in front of the two doors, stands the arbiter of our fate, an SS subaltern. On his right is the Blockältester, on his left, the quartermaster of the hut. Each one of us, as he comes naked out of the Tagesraum into the cold October air, has to run the few steps between the two doors, give the card to the SS man, and enter the dormitory door. The SS man, in the fraction of a second between two successive crossings, with a glance at one's back and one's front, judges everyone's fate, and in turn gives the card to the man on his right or left. And this is the life or death of each of us. In 3 or 4 minutes, a hut of 200 men is done, as is the whole camp of 12,000 men in the course of an afternoon. Jammed in the charnel house of the Tagesraum, I gradually felt the human pressure around me slacken, and in a short time, it was my turn. Like everyone I passed by with a brisk and elastic step, trying to hold my head high, my chest forward, my muscles contracted and conspicuous. With the corner of my eye, I tried to look behind my shoulders, and my card seemed to end on the right. As we gradually come back into the dormitory, we are allowed to dress ourselves. Nobody yet knows with certainty his own fate. It has first of all to be established whether the condemned cards were those on the right or on the left. By now there's no longer any point in sparing each other's feelings with superstitious scruples. Everybody crowds around the oldest, the most wasted away, and the most Mussulman, If their cards went to the left is certainly the side of the condemned. The selection is now over in our hut, but it continues in the others, so that we are still locked in. But as the soup pots have arrived in the meantime, the block Elchester decides to proceed with the distribution at once. A double ration will be given to those selected. Now, I have never discovered if this was a ridiculously charitable initiative of the block Elchester or an explicit disposition of the SS, but in fact, in the interval of 2 or 3 days, sometimes even much longer, between the selection and the departure, the victims at Monowitz Auschwitz enjoyed this privilege. Siegler holds out his bowl, collects his normal ration, and then waits there expectantly. "What do you want?" asks the block Elchester. According to him, Siegler is entitled to no supplement, and he drives him away. But Siegler returns and humbly persists. He was on the left, everyone saw it. Let the block Elchester check the cards. He has the right to a double ration. When he is given it, he goes quietly to his bunk to eat. a timid spring at last arrived. And in one of the first stretches of sunshine, there was a work-free Sunday afternoon, fragile and precious as a peach blossom. Everyone spent the day sleeping, the more energetic, exchanging visits between barracks or trying to mend their rags, attach buttons with wire, or file their nails on a stone. But from far away, carried by the whims of a tepid wind redolent of damp earth, we heard a new sound, a sound so improbable, so unexpected, that everybody lifted their head to listen. The sound was frail, like that of the sky and the sun. True, it came from far away, but from within the boundaries of the camp. Some overcame their inertia and set out to search, like bloodhounds, running into one another with faltering steps, their ears pricked. And they found Mangy Wolf sitting on a pile of boards, ecstatic, playing a violin. His seal, lifted to the sun, was quivering, his myopic gaze lost somewhere beyond the barbed wire, beyond the pale Polish sky. Where he could have found a violin was a mystery, but the veterans knew that in a camp, anything can happen. Perhaps he'd stolen it. Perhaps he'd rented it in exchange for bread. Wolf played for himself, but all those who came by stopped to listen with a greedy look, like bears catching the scent of honey, avid, timid, and perplexed. A few steps away lay Elias, his belly on the ground, staring at Wolf, almost spellbound. On his gladiator's face hovered that veil of contented stupor one sometimes sees on the faces of the dead, that makes one think they really had, for an instant, on the threshold, the vision of a better world. in the first days of January 1945, hard-pressed by the Red Army, the Germans hastily evacuated the Silesian mining region. But whereas elsewhere, in analogous conditions, they had not hesitated to destroy the lagers and their inhabitants by fire or arms, they acted differently in the district of Auschwitz. Superior orders had been received, given personally, it would seem, by Hitler, to recover at all costs every man fit for work. Thus, all healthy prisoners were evacuated in frightful conditions in the direction of Buchenwald and Mauthausen, while the sick were abandoned to their fate. One can legitimately deduce from the evidence that originally the Germans did not intend to leave one man alive in the concentration camps, but a fierce night air raid and the rapidity of the Russian advance induced them to change their minds and flee, leaving their task unfinished. In the sick bay of the lager at Brunna-Monowitz, 800 of us remained. Of these, about 500 died from illness, cold, and hunger before the Russians arrived, and another 200 succumbed in the following days, despite the Russians' aid. I reached Turin on the 19th of October, after 35 days of travel. My house was still standing. All my family was alive. No one was expecting me. I was swollen, bearded, and in rags, and had difficulty in making myself recognized. I found my friends full of life, the warmth of secure meals, the solidity of daily work, the liberating joy of recounting my story. I found a large, clean bed, which in the evening, a moment of terror, yielded softly under my weight. But only after many months did I lose the habit of walking with my glance fixed to the ground, as if searching for something to eat, or to pocket hastily, or to sell for bread. And a dream full of horror has still not ceased to visit me at sometimes frequent, sometimes longer intervals. It is a dream within a dream, varied in detail, one in substance. I'm sitting at a table with my family, or with friends, or at work, or in the green countryside, in short, in a peaceful, relaxed environment, apparently without tension or affliction. Yet I feel a deep and subtle anguish, the definite sensation of an impending threat. And in fact, as the dream proceeds, slowly or brutally, each time in a different way, everything collapses and disintegrates around me. The scenery, the walls, people. While the anguish becomes more intense and more precise. Now everything has changed to chaos. I am alone, in the center of a grey and turbid nothing. And now, I know what this thing means. And I also know that I have always known it. I am in the lager once more, and nothing is true outside the lager. All the rest was a brief pause, a deception of the senses, a dream. My family, nature in flower, my home. Now this inner dream, this dream of peace, is over. And in the outer dream, which continues, gelid, a well-known voice resounds. A single word, not imperious, but brief and subdued. It is the dawn command of Auschwitz, a foreign word, feared and expected. Stavach. Wake up.